Hello everyone, this is MechLord, and today we are playing Majespecter, a wonderfully free-to-play deck that can actually stand up to the meta. Sort of. So the last time we looked at Majespecter, it was a while back. The archetype I just released with new support, including Majespecter Tornado, preemptively limited to 1 because, I don't know, Konami is scared of this deck for no reason whatsoever. And in the wake of the release of the new box called Resonators, Majespecter received exactly 1 piece of support, the counter-trap Majespecter Tempest, which is basically a solemn strike that can be searched by the archetype, which is pretty good. Why did they release it in a main box that has literally 0 other Majespecter cards? They're all like low rarity and stuff, but the new box doesn't contain any of the Majespecter cards. So if you want to build the Majespecter deck, you have to go into the old box and pull all the cards, and then you have to go into the new box and pull this, which... Konami incompetence aside, this is a pretty fun deck to be playing. The archetype is of course pretty old now. It's an archetype that came out in the TCG in 2016, but which was a really important meta-centric archetype because the Majespecters are all pretty interesting cards. We are talking about a bunch of pendulum monsters with scales going from 2 to 5. None of them have pendulum effects, but all of them share the following effect, which is that they cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effect, which is pretty good. And also on summon, each of them does something different. Yata such as a spell, QB such as a trap, Nekomata such as any Majespecter card but only during the end phase, Bangbuku such as monsters, and Ogama sets a back row directly from your deck, but you can't activate it this turn. The back row itself is nothing to scoff at. We have Cyclone, which tributes a wind spellcaster, all of them are wind spellcasters, in order to target and destroy an opponent's monster. Storm is the same, except it's not a quick play and it shuffles it into the deck instead. Tornado banishes, and Tempest, like I said, Solemn Strike for the archetype, pretty good card. Also worth mentioning is Majespecter Gust, which specials a Majespecter from your pen zone. It's not the greatest. There are niche scenarios where you might want to be playing this because chances are you're not going to open enough monsters to make it worth otherwise, but it's not the greatest card to be playing. And Majespecter Supercell, which just, no, don't waste a back row zone on that. So the idea of this archetype is pretty simple. We want to run our opponent out of the resources by destroying or banishing or preventing the summon of their stuff before we then overwhelm them with card advantage, because since they're pendulum monsters and we do have a scale that allows us to set our scales pretty easily, we just get to bring them back from the extra deck plus a couple more times, play defensive until we got rid of all their resources, and now we can go for lethal, which is pretty cool. This skill is of course United Pendulums, pretty simple skill. Target a monster that you control, move it to your pen zone, and then you put another guy from your deck into your other pen zone, which just sets up your scale for free. Something that you have to remember is that after you activate this scale, you can only summon once from the extra deck, which means that if you were to go for, let's say, Utopia into Lightning, or any rank 4 into Full Armored Utopic Ray Lancer, that would not work. Speaking of the extra deck, while we are playing an attrition-based game, we do need some heavy hitters in order to finish up games. Full Armored Utopic Ray Lancer, fantastic card. Lightning can be a surprise lethal in many scenarios. Lightning Chidori takes care of back row, which also pretty good, even though most back row we're not going to care about because it targets and we don't care about targeting. And then this is just a bunch of more rank 4 goodies. We also have Nightmare Phoenix and Great Fly because it does boost our otherwise kind of weak Majespecter. Is also playing the Field Spell Majesty's Pegasus, but it is not treated as a Majespecter card because that was 2016 and Konami's released a bunch of field spells for archetypes that did not mention the archetype by name. Isn't that funny? Anyway, enough yapping about Majespecters, let's take a look at a couple of replays. Going crescendo with our replays, this first one is going to be against Battle Chronicle Blue Eyes, the most terrifying deck of 9 months ago. So, we are going second, but that's not necessarily our problem because most of the interaction Blue Eyes have is targeting and destroying, and we don't care about either of those, so that's pretty cool. We have opened the ends of 2 Ogamas and 1 QB, which is pretty decent. I'll talk more about that later. Opponent is going to reveal a Dragon Spirit of Light and 2 Ultimate Fusions, get 2 Blue Eyes from their hand, 1 alternative in the lot. I'm going to reveal the Blue Eyes, summon the alternative. Do we need to watch this summoning animation? I mean, I feel like anyone who's played for more than like 3 months has seen this a billion times already. Blue Eyes used to be everywhere on ladder, used to be the hero of 2024 and 2020 and 2021. More so 2021 than 2020. It was also wildly popular in the mid-2018, I think it was, but for completely different reasons. Anyway, here's Blue Eyes White Dragon, classic guy. They should really summon new Blue Eyes support in the TCG. It's been like 2 days since Blue Eyes got support in the TCG, which should really change that, give Blue Eyes even more support to play in the TCG, because Blue Eyes is only like a tier 2 or tier 3 deck at the moment. That's ridiculous. It should be tier 0, because this is what Konami wants, and this is how you get people to play your dogshit game. Anyway, they're gonna go into Sanofond, detach, even though we don't care about that, set 2, and pass. That's really not threatening to us. We're gonna drop a Crow, summon the Ogama, set a Tornado, because I like Tornado. Then we're going to set an Ogama. It is very important when you do this that you set a scale 2 and a scale 5 and try to think about which scales you're not going to get throughout the course of the game. As you can see, I've already opened a QB, so I can just put a QB there. I've interrupted my own pendulum summoning to Yap, so we're going to summon an Ogama, we're going to summon a QB, and we're going to summon a Yatta. QB is going to search, as is Yatta, not with Ogama because these effects are once per turn. We're going to get a Storm and a second Tempest, because I like Tempest. I'm going to storm the Sanofond out and try to go for battle, but my opponent is going to Ultimate Fusion, returning 2 Blue Eyes and an alternative for the Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and we don't really have the attack to be over that. I could go into rank 4 here, but I'm thinking no, because I know that they have the Battle Chronicle, and I would rather not lose the majespecters that I need to keep on the field for the back row to go live. So, opponent's going to activate Being a Machine Gun once again, excavating alternative. I wonder which one they're going to get. Reveal alternative, summon it, revealing Blue Eyes. Oh, they're going to summon the Blue Eyes once again. They're going to activate their skill to get a Successor Soul, even though this card is completely dead in this matchup. And then they're going to Exceed Summon a Dingesu. Now, the really cool thing is that since Majespecter Tempest cancels the summon, it gets destroyed, just goes to the graveyard. They're going to attack with the Neo Ultimate, but unfortunately, we do have the Tornado to take care of it. I say unfortunately for them, I don't really care what they do. We've opened Bambuku, which is the greatest Majespecter, one that you always want to have in your opening end if possible. Normal summoning Bambuku gets us another Majespecter, then we can Pendulum summon another from our extra deck and the one that we just searched from hand, which is not necessarily lethal, but gets us even more card advantage, even more back row to annoy our opponents with, and ultimately wins us the game. Which is why our opponent surrendered early. This next replay is going to be against Battlin Boxer, one of the rogue contenders of the previous format, and which has been power crept by the addition of more busted and ridiculous decks that, you can't really compete when your skill is only a +2. How are you meant to compete with skills that are +3s? Jesting, of course, but we did open the best Majespecter card, Majesty's Pegasus, which we can search otherwise, which allows us to normal Necromata to get a search in the end phase, then tribute the Necromata for a Bambuku. Bambuku is going to get us an Ogama, then we can activate our skill to scale our Bambuku and another Necromata, then Pendulum, summoning the 2 Majespecters in our hand and the 1 in our extra, so we have an Ogama that's going to search and 2 Necromatas that don't really do anything, but they're useful defense, I guess. We're going to set a Tempest, set an IDP, get a Yatta in the end phase, and pass the turn to our opponent. Pretty good defensive turn 1. Unfortunately, our opponent does have the Cosmic Cyclone to take care of the Majespecter Tempest, and then activate Books of Eclipse for a reason that I'm not really sure, because they don't know our archetype. We do not care that our monsters are face up or face down. We can still tribute them for our back row regardless. I don't know what this Book of Eclipse check was about. Maybe if they had access to something like a Dark Hole, it would make sense, because Book of Eclipse would have allowed them to clear a board of Dark Hole, but they don't. I don't know. They're gonna send a Veil to graveyard to set a Chief Second and a Promoter from deck. Flip the Promoter, which is going to tribute itself to get a Glassjaw and a Uppercutter. Uppercutter is going to get them a Switch Hitter, which, classic guy, really cool card. Really like this deck. They're going to put the two together into a Dempsey and activate the Dempsey effect so that they can no longer be targeted by card effects, and also get a search, which is pretty cool. They're going to get the Ring Announcer, which is bad news for me. They're going to activate the Ring Announcer. I have to chain the IDP in order to summon back their Glassjaw, banish the Dempsey and their Glassjaw, and make sure that none back row of mine is going to get destroyed, because at the time of resolution, they no longer control an Xyz monster. Support back row. It is very important in this deck that you get to keep your scales, even though we have a Yata that could easily replace the Bambuku were there to destroy it. We'd rather not. We'd rather not go for that, even though we have the Majestic Pegasus that could easily get us another Bambuku in order to get a search. And keep your advantage. Also, I feel like IDPing the Dempsey, not such a bad choice. They're gonna flip the Chief Second, not use the additional normal, which is, in my opinion, a mistake, but they're going to put it into another King Dempsey normal, the Switch Hitter. Switch Hitter is going to revive the Promoter. Then they're going to put these two together into a Legiox. Not the greatest Battlin Boxer, opportunity over there. Kind of disappointing. They're going to attack into two of our monsters, sending them to the extra. Book of Eclipse is going to draw me a Cyclone, which is really good, but we have to keep in mind that the Dempsey prevents us from targeting their stuff. So as long as it has material to detach from the field anywhere. So we're going to go into a QB. QB is going to get a Tornado. Then we are going to pen summon two monsters. We drew the Signal Wells, not really important. We're going to get to summon the Ogama and the Yata. Both of them are going to get us searches. I forgot what I search here. I'm going to search a Cyclone, which is really cool, and a Storm for next turn, I guess. And then I'm going to rank these two up into a Malevolent Sin. I can't use the Malevolent Sin effect, but it's just a vessel for my real plan, which is full armored Utopic Ray Lancer. Unfortunately, the last card on opponent's hand is Effect Veiler, which means I'm not going to be able to wipe their board clear on this turn. Can try activate the effect, it's not going to resolve. Can attack into the Dempsey, but the Legio can still detach and grow bigger as a result. But as the turn passes, the full armored Utopic Ray Lancer is going to get back its effect. My opponent is going to go into battle, realize that I just negated the monster effect, and in the end phase, I get to tribute the last majespecter on my field in order to get rid of the Dempsey, because it's kind of annoying. They're trying to respond with the Dempsey effect, but it's not really going to work. Now it's my turn. They don't have anything that they can do. Maybe this is a targeting thing. It doesn't really matter. Okay, QB is going to get us the Tempest that we can not summon anything, but we probably have lethal with the full armored Utopic Ray Lancer. And even if we don't, we still have enough cards that we can outvalue our opponent throughout the course of the next following turns before we eventually beat them, which is why our opponent is going to concede. This third replay is going to be against Dinosaurs, but I have to warn you, this is not really representative of an actual game that you should expect to be playing against a good Dinosaur player. Opponent doesn't have an extra deck, and they're playing some pretty weird cards, which, that's up to them. I'm not going to judge. Not the greatest majespecter hand. We've only opened one name, which we're going to have to normal. Yata gets us another Cyclone with the Wave 1. Set the two Cyclones pass. We can't even afford to scale because we have nothing to Pendulum Summon. Opponent is going to activate Fossil Dig, get a Misk. But I've read this card. I know how it works. They're going to go for Soiling Oviraptor, searching the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno rather. Then they're going to go straight to battle, try to attack, but Misk only works during the main phase, so I can safely Cyclone my Yata and their Oviraptor away. I'm going to draw a Necromata. Pretty cool. It allows us to scale because we already have a Majespecter in our pen zone, so we're going to scale a Yata and a Necromata with our skill in order to Pendulum Summon our Yata back from the extra deck. Yata is going to get us the last Cyclone from our deck, which we're going to set. I'm also setting the Storm because if our opponent has back row removal, maybe they're going to go for the Storm instead of the thing that I just searched. And then in the end phase, I get to search a Bambuku. Saluting of a Raptor is going to get a Tyranno Infinity. When was the last time you've seen this card? Then they're going to pitch Misk. I could have responded with the Cyclone here, but I don't really feel like it. They're going to summon a Petit Tranodon. Doesn't really do anything. Battle phase, we're going to go for Cyclone once again. Petit Tranodon is going to destroy itself in the end phase. He summon a Superconductor Tyranno. When was the last time you saw this card? Unfortunately for them, they do not have another Misk. I'm just gonna Dark Hole. Just gonna Dark Hole it, you know? If they had another Misk, you know, that's fine. I'm just testing for Misk at this point. I get to summon a Yatta from my extra, a Bangbuku, and an Ogama. The Bangbuku is going to search another majespecter that I can normal summon. The Ogama is going to get us a Tempest, which I can set. The QB is going to search the Tornado. I think at this point I can set it because I've used my back zones. But look, I have all 5 majespecters on my board. Nekomata in my scale, Ogama, Bambuku, Kyubi, and Yatta. That's pretty cool. I found that pretty comforting. Anyway, gonna go for lethal, at least try to, but as I go for my last 2 attacks, my opponent is going to reveal that they had a Kite Trade all along, preventing me from beating them this turn, but I'm not too concerned. We are playing an attrition game, and we have the advantage, even though our opponent has 5 cards in hand. They're going to banish 2 dinosaurs from the graveyard in order to special Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, but Tempest can negate the summon before they're even able to misquit, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna go for Tyranno Infinity, try to attack my guy. I can just Cyclone it away, get him out of here. They have a back row, not too concerned about. They're just gonna concede because they know that we have won this game. Again, not really representative of the average facing Dinos experience, but really fun game. And our last game today is going to be against Resonators, the probably best deck of this format, and I'm gonna have a hot take here. I know everyone is waiting for me to complain about this deck because Mechlord always complains about whatever the best deck is. I'm mostly fine with this deck. The strength of this deck is that it does contain cards that were... I'm just gonna yap during the turn 1 Resonator combo. The strength of this deck is that it contains cards that were designed in 2023, so with a modern mindset in mind, you know, cards that are meant to play through and against hand traps like Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, Nibiru, even though Nibiru is in Duel Links, but not to the extent that it is here, Dimension Shifter, Maxi if you're still playing in Hell. And if this is the new standards that we can expect decks to get to as we go forward, and that would make sense considering, you know, if we follow the branded storyline, we should be getting Sword Soul and Despia and the branded stuff next. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the natural power creep that occurs as we include more modern archetypes in Duel Links that were designed with the modern game in mind. What I am less fine with is the skill that this deck uses, because the deck, it's not a consistency skill. The deck is consistent enough as is. I don't mind the part where you get a free RD out of your skill summit, but it's not necessary, right? Like, why do you design a skill where you just click yellow button, get RDA? That bit doesn't make too much sense to me. Speaking of RDA, this is still one of the coolest animations in all of Duel Links. I don't like the part of the skill where you click yellow button, you get Fiendish Chain, and it's basically pretty much you're going second. Like, who, why, what the fuck? Who thought this would be necessary? Something that I really lament about modern Duel Links is there are so many cool archetypes that would have had rather the opportunity to express themselves and be played in a way that like is closer to the actual TCG or pre-skill links, Duel Links, you know. But because you get a busted skill, it doesn't make sense not to play with a busted skill. I feel like Predaplants is one such archetype where, again, you get cards from recent waves of support like Blybliss, and I think pretty much only Blybliss, Predaplast, no, not Predaplast, what's the other one? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, we get a bunch of recent support designed with a different game in mind. I would have liked to see how Predaplants would have fared in a game where Starving Venom Invasion wasn't the broken bustedness that it is. A game in which Predaplants actually have to run fusion spells because they don't just get to click yellow button and get a fusion spell for free. but we're never going to get to see that because this exists. Same with Salmon Grate. I would have rather liked to see, you know, Salmon Grate of Fire be released as a limited one card or something, or a hard limit run rather, because else it would have conflicted with Gazelle, which I don't think is really interesting. I would have rather liked to see, you know, people actually having to put Salmon Grate of Fire into their deck and play with it than click yellow button, you get a Salmon Grate for Fire for free, also a Burning Shell from inside of your deck for free. Also, if you're going second, you get another card for basically free. Like, that's not really interesting. It removes a lot of, like, skill expression in Duel Links, which is something that I really lament. And Duel Links should not be the place where, you know, already good archetypes, already promising archetypes get busted scale that support them to a point where they get even more busted than what they would have. I would have liked to see, you know, scale support weaker archetypes like the Springans scales, you know, fusing the Albaz and Springans playstyle together. I think it's really interesting scale. Maybe not the most balanced out there, but a really interesting one. More so than anything that, you know, Lyrilisk or Resonators or Predator Plants or Salmon Grate have been getting. Definitely more so than the dog shit that is Dragonic Contact that only exists to push a super linear playstyle that I don't think anyone is actually actively enjoying. So, yeah, that's my take. Resonators, a cool deck. Why did it have to get a skill? That's it. Anyway, unfortunately for us, we've opened a hand of only one majespecter name. Fortunately for us, Abyss does target, so they're not going to be able to negate our monsters or anything. But unfortunately for us, they can still negate our battery. And we have one majespecter name. And we can't really, you know, outvalue a modern deck because these are cards from 2016. These are cards from like 2023. So that's fine. You know, I knew that going into the duel. What is less fine in the fact that they're playing a cringe Floodgate. My opinion on Floodgate is that they're fine if they're in their own dedicated, you know, stack style deck. But in regular combo decks, this is cringe and this is not something that should be allowed. Maybe that's just me though, you know. Anyway. I'm gonna get a Necromata to far end phase, sell off 3 back row. No, that's really gonna matter because our opponent has 3 huge monsters and all we have is a little cat to protect our life points. So you can probably guess how this one is gonna. Crimson Guy is gonna get them a Scarlet Security, which they can activate because their back row is full. Anyway, they're gonna get a Crimson Resonator, which they're gonna tribute with the Bane in order to revive the Great Red Dragon Archfiend, and they're just gonna go for lethal. We're going to activate the Majespecter Tornado for show, fully knowing that our opponent has like 2 ways to negate it anyway, so this game was never meant to be won, but I think it is a clear demonstration of the power gap between, you know, modern deck and less than modern deck. Even without accounting for their skill, I think there's no beating Resonators with a deck as powerful, or rather the other way around. There's no beating Resonators with a deck as power crept, was what I meant to say, as Majespecters. Still worth a try. So that's the deck, and like I've mentioned, there's probably a reason why this deck isn't part of the metagame. You don't have a completely bonkers skill that pluses you to infinity and makes it so you can challenge all the top tier decks that have bonkers skills that pluses you to infinity. The cards are pretty old at this stage, you know, they're turning 10 next year, which is definitely something worth keeping in mind. These cards were designed with a slower game and added to Duel Links at a time where, you know, the game has already moved past their ability to outgrind and outvalue a lot of decks, but it's still a fun deck to be playing. You have to keep in mind that if you're playing this deck, you should not expect to win consistently against stuff like Salmon Grate or Resonators, even though your deck has natural built-in defenses against these decks. You know, they can wipe your board, they can target your stuff. At the end of the day, you are playing a 2016 deck against decks that were designed and with support coming from the 2020s. That's completely fine, and that's not like proof that the game is fundamentally broken. You know, something actually you have to keep in mind when you complain about the meta is you can't complain that you got shot if you brought a sword to a gunfight. Anyway, that'll be it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. I have a lot more yapping in me concerning the current metagame that I'm probably saving for a future video, so let me know if you're excited about that. And if you like this video, make sure to, well, like it, comment if you haven't already, and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate that. If you'd like to support me further, you can check out my Ko-fi in the video description, where you can make a one-time donation or a monthly pledge. And I would like to thank my Ko-fi donators in the form of Dingust, Howard's Boy Zero, Jimmy, Zinnia, Yannick, Sile, Marklu, Fortunilo16, the Majespecter Guru, Orc Price, and Exorcist. Thank you all for the support. Sorry for the lack of videos this week. I have been really busy with like real life stuff. Not necessarily obligations, just, you know, enjoying the outside world, spending time with friends, loved ones, families, and spending as much time away from the internet as possible, and that includes Duel Links. Thank you all for watching once again. I hope that you have a wonderful time. Take care everyone, and I will see you all next time.